Hey guys, what's up? I'm Sci-Hi. It's mid-January, and I'm back with another deck tech, back into Mythic with the trusty grinding deck, Auras. As many of you know, if you've been following along, I've been really bullish on the mono white version of Auras. I'll have a link to that below in the description if you haven't checked it out yet. I still fully endorse that deck. I think it's great. It gives you some advantages over other Azorius builds, which we'll take a look at here. I still think it's great to be mono white in Auras. You get a lot of advantages. Simplistic mana base, you can keep a lot more hands. You get to run more utility lands without much of an opportunity cost. So still think it's an awesome deck if you're still looking to build that or running it. I still think it's an absolutely great deck, but I've just been experimenting with this white-blue version a little bit more, which we can take a look at now. Of course, please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you guys want to see if you're not already subscribed. Please do so. I definitely appreciate it. But without further ado, we'll take a look at this version. So why might you want to add a blue splash to Auras? Well, in my opinion, the number one reason, well, there's actually maybe kind of two reasons really, but Staggering Insight is the really hot, awesome white-blue enchantment. One white, one blue, enchanted creature gets +1/+1, has lifelink, and whenever you deal combat damage, you draw a card. So it's really a beefed up version of Curious Obsession, which is just one white, blue. Creature gets +1/+1 and draws you a card, no lifelink. But Curious Obsession has the drawback of if you didn't attack in a turn, you have to actually sacrifice the enchantment. So you'll notice that is a notably absent aura in my build. And other people I've seen agree that while Curious Obsession is really good in certain decks for sure, I just don't think it's the right fit here. I've experimented with it enough that oftentimes you get into situations with your Kor Spiritdancer or Sram where you have an empty board state and you're recasting things out, and you want to get those draw triggers by casting Curious Obsession, but you don't have a creature that can actually attack, so you're in this awkward position where, well, it's really not that good to cast the Curious Obsession just to get one draw trigger, and you can't attack, so then all of a sudden you have to sacrifice it right away. That's no good, so I've not running any Curious Obsessions here, and we do have, of course, the standard Sram Kor Spiritdancer package, as well as Esper Sentinels to draw us a lot of cards. And then, of course, in addition to what I just mentioned, the Staggering Insights to draw cards. This is one of the best auras right now in Historic, just one of the best auras, period, you can run in this archetype. So I see this is the main reason to be in blue. A lot of times you'll see people running counter spells as well. Certainly in a best of 3 situation, I think that's best for your sideboard. In just best of 1 grinding, I think it's not worth putting the counter spells in. It's just, there's going to be too many situations where they're just not good, and you want to just stick to the proactive game plan, which is, of course, casting Sram, casting Kor Spiritdancer, and getting as many draw triggers as you can. Of course, your primary targets for the auras will be Kor Spiritdancer, as well as Esper Sentinel is good to load up, of course, because it gets more difficult for your opponent to pay the tax the bigger this guy gets. And then also Hushbringer, which is just such an all-star right now, stops so much stuff, just shits on white-green decks, stops their entire game plan. Not a lot of decks in the white-green variety use enchantments to remove things like Banishing Light. A lot of them just use Skyclave Apparition or other ETB effects with their creatures. So this deck this card rather, Hushbringer, as if you've seen my previous videos, hugely bullish on this card. It just stops so much. But anyways, this is also a very good primary target for more auras, just because given it's already flying, it already has lifelink, so that's huge. We'll look at all the individual choices momentarily, but just while we're talking about this being an Azorius deck, we'll talk about the other only blue cards in the deck. We only have 8 blue cards, so it's a really light blue splash, but I think it's worthwhile. One of the biggest things I missed when I'm running the mono white version is just an ability to completely make a creature unblockable. We had the the rune or whatever it is to give a creature flying, to give some soft evasion, but it's not just a true total can't be blocked ability. That's why I love Aether Tunnel. Maybe 1 or 2 copies. I'm on 2 currently. I think it's just such an important card that I want at least 2 floating around in the deck. Even in the mirror match, sometimes you just get in absurd situations where people are just racing to get the largest creature, and sometimes an Aether Tunnel can just separate you from the win by having the ability to just have your creature not be blocked at all. So the +1/+0 and can't be blocked, just a huge ability here. So Aether Tunnel would be my second reason to run blue. The other blue card we'll look at, not terribly exciting by any means, just a Arcane Flight, giving a creature +1/+1 and flying. Again, nothing too crazy, but being only 1 blue is very important. We want some low casting cost auras so we can really pop off. As you know, if you're already familiar with this archetype, Sentinel's Eyes and Cartouche of Solidarity are staples in the deck, which again, they don't seem that amazing, but just having a 1 mana aura that still has upside and buffs your creature is huge here, because the Kor Spiritdancer, of course, always being your primary target, this thing just gets out of control, snowballs very quickly. Its power and toughness are going to be massive with just a few castings of these cards. And again, just the 1 casting cost really allows you to pop off, start getting those draw triggers early and as fast as possible, and just start churning through your deck to find more auras. So those are the blue cards. The mana base is pretty straightforward, just simple. We're not looking to do anything too crazy. I don't have any utility lands here. You could argue maybe sprinkling a few in, but I wanna always have access to blue without sacrificing too much slowness in having lands come into the battlefield tapped. So I could see an argument for maybe trimming like maybe 1 Glacial Fortress, because sometimes you get kind of cornered where you don't have natural plains or islands, and this comes into play tapped. But for the most part, I've been grinding a lot of games. This base has been looking good. Of course, in the description below, I'll have the deck list pasted if you want to use this as a base, or maybe you want to just take this exact list and try it out on the ladder. You can copy that in the description below. But without much more to say on the lands, I'll just quickly run through all the rest of the cards. Nothing too special if you're already familiar with the archetype, but we've already mentioned the Cartouches, the Sentinel's Eyes, the Arcane Flights. I've got 3 copies of Esper Sentinel. I just think this is still a bomb. I think it has a lot of play and a lot of synergy in this deck. It's a great 1-drop. It benefits from having more auras attached to it. Like I said earlier, it just makes the tax more difficult for your opponent to pay once this guy gets bigger and bigger. And it's also an artifact creature, so it does, in fact, boost all the glitters even higher, because this, of course, makes the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact or enchantment you control. So always make sure to cast your Esper Sentinels before you attack if you have all the glitters attached to something to get that light boost. I've got 3 copies, and I'd love to fit 4, but I'm just not currently. It's kind of a balance of creatures and kind of half creatures, half enchantments. Been tweaking the numbers to be as fluid as possible and just have this deck really pop off as frequently as possible by fine-tuning these numbers. The other 1-drop, 4 Selfless Saviors. This guy, it's man's best friend, dog. It's so good here. This can help you be more resilient to sweepers, Wrath of God effects, just spot removal on your important key creatures. Like Kor Spiritdancer helps them stay alive. It's also awesome, of course, with Lurrus, which is we have the benefit of running a companion in Lurrus, one of the best, maybe the best companion there is, because our deck's so low to the ground. We don't have any permanents over 2. So Lurrus is awesome here. And just resolving Lurrus with Selfless Savior online is difficult for a lot of decks to deal with. It's just a constant recursion of Selfless Savior. Defending Lurrus can really create a problem for a lot of other decks that just can't deal with resiliency this potent. So that's all good there in the 1-drops. Moving on to the 2-drops, I'm very, bullish, big on all that glitters. I see a lot of builds with like 2 or 3, and I'm on the full 4. I have not really seen the reason not to. I just think this snowballs out of control so quickly. I let me know in the comments. I'm curious why people would opt to not run 4 of this card. My experience with it is that it just a couple of these in play gets out of control so quickly, and you're swinging for lethal easily and consistently on the 4th turn, if not sooner sometimes. Yeah, so I'm bullish on all the glitters. 4 copies here. I think that's one of the strongest enchantments or auras in the deck. Hushbringer, I've been talking about this card as it's just a great hedge against the white-green decks. It stops so much. It stops Muxus. The only times when this can really burn you, and we'll have to pay attention to the metagame to see how things shape up, but against some of the Rakdos, Kroxa decks, they can beware of Kroxa, because if you have this in play, they of course can resolve Kroxa for 1 red, 1 black, and then he's not going to the graveyard. They suddenly have a 6/6 creature that they're gonna beat your face with. So that's the only downfall of Hushbringer, but there's just so much upside. It absolutely just trashes a lot of decks, especially on the best of 1 ladder right now. A lot of aggro decks just cannot deal with this. Like I said, the white-green decks, they can't deal with this. They have way too many ETB effects, including their only removal package a lot of times. The only way they can stop this card is if they build their deck with other types of removal that aren't creatures entering the battlefield, like Banishing Light or different enchantments like that. But most of the decks, they don't build that way because they run Collected Company, of course, so they want to have a high creature saturation count. So you don't usually have to worry about Banishing Light. So Hushbringer is absolutely awesome. If you're in best of 3 and you know you're already playing against an ETB type deck, I would absolutely consider mulliganing to try to find this card, because it's just an absolute silver bullet. Of course, we got Spiritdancer, Sram, our draw engine, and we already covered these enchantments. This is just a great solid white-blue Azorius Auras deck. Totally endorse it. If you're just looking for a, in my opinion, relatively easy deck to play, great grind ability. It's just a great deck to just grind with, and kind of once you learn the play patterns and what to do, it's pretty straightforward, and you can just kind of zone out and grind this thing all the way to Mythic. You still, of course, like any deck, there's a lot of decisions to make. Not every game is mindless and straightforward. I've had just some insane games in the mirror match where both players stall out. You actually recognize that, depending on your opponent's build, if they have Esper Sentinels as well, that you can actually start drawing too many cards if nobody can close the game, and everyone's just gaining way too much life. And you can recognize and you can try to hold off and not draw as many cards. Let your opponent deck themselves first. But I probably shouldn't delve into talking about that too much, because we're talking about like 0.1% of your games might turn into something like that. The majority of your games are going to be won just by attaching auras to Spiritdancer and just beating face and not worrying about what your opponent's trying to even do. But yeah, the deck's very straightforward. There's certain things that it can't deal with as well, unless you go best of 3 or you tune your deck to deal with certain things. Like, we have no removal. We're purely executing our strategy. We can't do anything about what our opponent's doing in their graveyard, so we're just screwed. If they reanimate, it's just something that we can't deal with. But that's how it goes in best of 1. You can't be prepared for everything with a deck like this if you're just trying to execute a simple strategy. So that can be frustrating and polarizing, but again, that's just the nature of best of 1. You always can play best of 3 and fine-tune a sideboard so you can be prepared for everything and get into a lot more variation of matches. But that being said, even just best of 1, I think the variety of matches you have is staggering, and the metagame's still pretty healthy in my opinion. There's a good variety of decks all through, while I was just grinding through Platinum, Diamond, and now in Mythic. I'm still seeing a healthy amount of different things. So Anyways, guys, that's the deck. Let me know what you think in the comments. Any changes you would make. Any questions you may have about my numbers or certain play strategies. I'd be happy to help and happy to discuss how to maybe even make this better for sure, because it's still, as always, a work in progress. But anyways, I'm Sci-Hi. Please like, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, good luck on the ladder, guys. Peace.